The views expressed on this broadcast of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show do not necessarily reflect those of Take 12 Radio, KHLT Recovery Broadcasting, or our affiliates. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Now here are your co-hosts, Tony Messbarger and the Monty'man.
Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to another workshop here. This is workshop number 3, or I should say show number 3 on this workshop, Understanding Intervention, with our friend Tony Messbarger at Benchmark Recovery Center in Austin, Texas. Tony, how you doing this week, my friend?
I'm doing well. Busy, which, what we discussed earlier, great. It's always good to be busy in this business, getting people well. So, yeah, great week.
Right. Well, when you're in the business that you're in, it can really take you for a ride. I mean, you're going to be busy all the time. You have to be really flexible, right? I mean, you're in the business of saving lives, and sometimes those lives seem like they want to be saved, but then they change their minds, don't they?
Oh, they do. I got case after case of that. I mean, for the most part, and we do a pretty good job of getting them on the hook and reeling them in, but a lot of times it can be very wearing. I mean, you definitely have to take care of yourself. I mean, there has to be self-care involved when you're working in this industry for sure.
You bet.
That's why I get up early in the mornings and I work out early in the mornings that way, because I know I'm going to be phone busy. I'm going to be on the phones or something along those lines. So I get up early and do my exercise and get my prayer and meditation out of the way, and get a good connection going, and then leave for work. And then, of course, during the course of the day, do some self-care, get away from the phones for a little bit, and just disconnect from it. You got to do that. You have to.
Yep, you do.
Or you can't let it own you.
Right,
sure.
Right. You betcha. Well, we've been talking about intervention, and listeners, and if you are listening to this show and you haven't listened to part 1 and 2, I encourage you to do that. Our first show was intervention. What is it? And Tony explained exactly what it is, what it isn't. And our second show was called Getting the Family on Board. And that was all about talking to the loved ones, maybe even employers, family members, and getting people on the same page, because it's important that we are all on the same page when it comes to intervening on someone who needs an intervention. Well, this workshop, the third one out of 4, is called Face to Face. Tony, you want to explain what this is, and you just want to kind of launch us forth on what this is all about?
Well, we'll tell you this. There's so much value to going knee to knee, face to face with somebody, family members, the addicted. It really does work. There's something about being able to, read body languages, see people's reaction to different things. It's hard over the telephone to really gauge what's going on. I mean, if you've been doing it for years, you can kind of figure out some of this stuff. But actually going toe to toe with people, in this case, if you're doing an intervention, obviously the family first, and some of the pre-intervention work that's involved with that. And then, of course, during the execution of the intervention itself, that's going face-to-face with the actual addicted person.
Okay, so when that happens, when it's time to talk to the person, and you bring them in, I mean, we talked about going to them or having them come to you. What's preferable?
Well, I like to have it in a neutral spot a lot of times, just depending on the situation. I mean, we talked about the fact that if you've got somebody that could have a real healthy network of enablers around them, people that are maybe dangerous, you'll find that quite often in the meth world. You don't want to walk into something. Safety's always first. So you don't want to walk into a situation where you're going to put your life in danger and the people that are involved in the intervention. So a neutral spot is always good. And then of course, a lot of times you're going to find them that are actually still living at home, or they're living in an apartment or something like that. And if you know enough of the particulars, you can go into those situations without having to put a bunch of safety up. I mean, you look for dogs, you look for different things like that, but I really like neutral areas. Invite them over to a certain area to do it, or most of them are done in a parent's home, or they've invited them over. They magically found some money or something along those lines, and they come over. Of course, the addict will come over for the money, and then you just sit down with them.
Sure. Okay, you had an experience now with honoring anonymity and so forth. Can you take us through some of the stuff that went on this last week? You said had some ammo for us this week as far as information goes. You were doing a face-to-face, true?
Yeah, absolutely. What happened here in this particular case? I had done some work with the family to get them moving towards wellness, and get their loved one moving towards wellness, and everything worked out. I mean, one of the things that you're working with is generally the first call is going to be a crisis call. You got to get them out of that crisis mode and get them refocused on solution. And so I got this family moving. There wasn't enough work, to be done. They had to move this individual fairly quick. She had been out all night long drinking, once again, and everybody was pretty much fed up. And they said, "Well, we got to get her somewhere." They really thought she was going to hurt herself. So, of course, on that one there, we moved this individual towards a detox center away from her home, which is very preferable, by the way, where you want to move them away from home. You don't want them in their own hometown. They get well on you, too,
right,
if you will.
Yeah.
So we moved her and got her to our place, and, of course, that involves a lot of going back and doing a lot of rework with the family, to get them completely, again, sewn up and on board. I'd much rather do that at the front end, at the front door, than I would, have to go back and do rework, because there's always holes in it. And, of course, the family's at a distance, and so I was not able to get face-to-face with them. And, of course, their loved one went into this detox setting, and, of course, immediately did not want to be there, which is a lot of the case.
Yeah.
But she was able to get to her husband and start working her. Let me rephrase that. Her disease got to her husband and started reworking him. I mean, completely worked him over. I learned my lesson, all the same stuff that you always hear. Learn my lesson and all this other stuff. What really ended up happening was within, a couple of days, I realized, working with the family, I was doing triage with the family, I realized that, she moved too quick. There wasn't enough work done. And, of course, the husband bought into every bit of it. The end of the story is she left with him out of detox with her plan on how it was going to look. Mind you, this plan was one that, it was a plan that she had already tried back in the day. So, she's good chance. I wish her all the luck in the world. She may be doing well at this point in time. I'll have to check on her, but at this point in time, her chances have been reduced considerably, because yet the disease, which you do not negotiate with, once again. Now, I guess the lesson learned there, yet once again, is you really try to slow these families down and say, look, let's do this in a more methodical way than rather a reactive way, because you can do a lot of work with families over the phone, but at some point in time, getting face-to-face with them and sitting down with them and saying, okay, this is what you're up against. And I read body languages. I've found so much to be in body language. You mentioned something about enabling, and usually, before the fingers start pointing, you'll see somebody in the room get very uncomfortable. They'll get very uncomfortable because they know that they're the ones that are funding their disease. And so, body language means everything. So face-to-face is more preferable. Had I had this family face-to-face and not had to have done the phone work and move her as quickly as we had to, according to them, move her as quickly as we had to, there's a good chance that she'd still be in detox, and then she would have moved over towards a treatment setting.
Right.
Not of her own.
When you're working with a family face to face, do you sit down with individual family members or as a group? How's that work?
As a group.
Uh-huh.
As a group. That's the best way to do it, is with a group. Very rarely. Now, there'll be an individual, every once in a while, there'll be an individual in the pre-intervention that will pull you off to the side and ask some questions and stuff like that. But everything is transparent and done around, everybody's in a group setting. Everything is transparent. And it's really important to do that, because you don't want anybody as a lone ranger, if you will, doing their own thing, or coming up. So there's some boundaries and some rules that are set up. There's handouts and there's things like that you give them around enabling, different things that you can, information that they can take with them to read on and stuff like that. And of course, you read the letters and you see the reaction around the letters. What I'm looking for is, let's say, some emotions. They're reading the letters to us and showing, this is the pre-intervention work. They're reading the letter and somebody gets real emotional. I encourage them to use that emotion in the intervention itself when it's executed. It means the world, because you're trying to tug on some heartstrings.
Right.
You're trying to get this person to feel something in a bare moment. And so that's really important. So, the meeting is face-to-face with the family. I would never be involved in an intervention or do an intervention that did not have pre-intervention work done. I'm talking about face-to-face time where you sit down with the family unit and maybe a couple of other influential people and do that type of work. It just, there's people that will do that. I don't prescribe to that.
What is the percentage of folks that you sit down with where the family is a broken family, a broken home?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's really sad to see. That's what the disease of addiction, it divides, and we talked about this in one of the previous shows. It's a divider, and it loves division more than anything. And so, most of the time you're seeing a lot of broken families. The disease affects. It's proven it's a family disease. And so, I'll give you for instance. Let's say a mother has her son that's addicted to heroin, and she knows it, and she knows he's on it, and she has a job. Well, she's going to that job. First of all, she's not giving 100% at that job. She's not, actively participating in her employment. But not only that, but at home, my goodness, it's like an elephant sitting in the middle of the room. And usually, there's going to be some blame game going on. I call it the blame game. Somebody's responsible for it. Well, if he wouldn't have done this or that, then he wouldn't be like this or that. And so there's a wall of ignorance around the disease of addiction and what they're really up against. And so, and again, it loves to divide families. What better way to divide families, than to have this person out there on an island by themselves?
Sure.
It's everybody, a lot of times what you'll see families that have been trying to deal with this as individuals. They're not coming to bed together as a unit, and there's the value, again, of bringing the family together and getting everybody speaking the same language. In the intervention itself, you'll see unification, and you'll see families that will actually get relief in the unification that comes behind that. That's the beautiful thing about an intervention, is to see a divided family go into a unified stance against the disease of addiction.
Right.
And of course, they're moving their loved ones towards wellness. Everybody gets well. There's the good news.
What about the stepfather or stepmother? Do you ever have problems where maybe you get a divorced mom and dad? They're coming together to both, help their child, and then there's this outsider to, maybe dad feels like the new husband really doesn't get it. What's he doing here, and that kind of thing. Does that ever happen?
Oh yeah.
I'll bet.
And when you have one of those situations, and that's a great question, because you do. That's quite often that you get. We live in a society of divorce. There's
right.
a lot of that goes on, remarriages and whatnot, and they can be a little bit complicated because usually one parent is angry at the other one, where they're not even talking, and then they have to come together in unification to get this thing done. And really the before pre-intervention, over the telephone, I'm telling the parents, I'm saying, look, you have to get over yourselves here for a moment. This is not about the two of you and what's happened between the two of you, and you gotta. There's a gentle way of doing that to where you can bring them together. And this is a cause. We got to get this done, and it's not that difficult to get it done, but there's some work involved in it. And then, of course, stepfathers a lot of times will be completely out of the picture. The father will be completely out of the picture, and the stepfather steps in to help, and then the biological father will get upset because he wasn't involved, yet he's using drugs with Johnny.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of complications, to some of this stuff. I mean, absent fathers are very common, and so you got a stepfather. And a lot of it's got to depend on the relationship that the stepfather has with the addicted, the IP. A lot of times what you'll find is because they're not blood, or they're not biologically connected, what you'll find a lot of times is they have the trust of that step-parent. Because that step-parent plays kind of this neutral party, so they can be very, very effective in this process. Very.
Right. Okay, let's talk about the... let's stay on the child and the parent thing for a minute. 'Cause I do want to talk about the reverse of that, where there is children trying to intervene on a parent. But let's stay on the child for a second. Is it common for the child to find a spouse, a sibling, during the intervention that they feel they can take sides with or get on their side? And does the person, does it happen to where they kind of, the family member who was supposed to be kind of standing on this united front ends up melting and taking the side of the one you're intervening on?
Oh, you know what? And again, there's your pre-intervention work.
Yeah.
That is all done in the pre-intervention work. That's why this is why in the pre-intervention, if you see somebody that is not going to be able to stand firm with their boundaries and their letter, then you'll ask them, then we're going to just put you in the background here. It's not anything against you or anything like that. We need to pare this down some. So there's people that may have a little feelings hurt that they're not part of it, but you can smell that out pretty quick. The one thing about it is, the way that this is executed is, they have a letter that's written.
Right.
And in that letter, you keep them right on that letter. There's no ad-libbing. There's none of this, by the way, it doesn't work like that. It's completely, and those letters are seamed up. Everybody knows exactly what's on that letter. There's no ad-libbing. Even if the addict stops and tries to say it, I keep them quiet and just say, be respectful and let your mother, your father, your brother, sister, aunt, uncle, or whatever continue on. And you'll have a moment to speak here, and you'll have your opportunity to speak in a moment. And so it really keeps everything like that. Of course, the interventionist's job is to make sure that everything is orchestrated and that they have control over that intervention, not the addict, not the family members.
Right.
They'll make a mess of it. So you have to have complete control of the room. The addict will, most of the time, they're going to try to take control of the situation and manage the situation. And of course, if you know how to manage, if you're good enough, you know how to take that out. Right.
Okay, let's talk about children intervening on mom or dad. Mm-hmm. Is there a different dynamic there?
Yeah, a little bit. You definitely will see that a lot of times. There's your difficult ones in a lot of cases because you got a child that was raised by this individual. Then they're coming in and telling them, we're not going to do this, and this. I mean, it really is. It could be a real tough one.
Yeah.
To weave through. But again, there's where the pre-intervention that's done. And making it real firm that we're not talking to dad here. We're not talking to mom here. We're talking to the disease of addiction. See, and that's really, it's important. I've said that several times, and I don't know if I've clarified myself on that point, that what we're up against here is the disease of addiction, not the individual itself. The disease of addiction is what we're up against, and that's who you're addressing. You're not addressing, mom or dad. You're addressing the disease of addiction, and that really does help out when you're dealing with parental when you got a parent or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It really does help. So. They're able to do that and whatnot, but it's very common, by the way, and a lot of this has got to do with how involved they are in their lives. I mean, a lot of times by the time the disease of addiction has taken them to an isolated place where they may not have even been in contact for years.
Right.
That can work to your benefit because they walk in and they've missed, really deep down inside, the real person underneath there has missed their loved ones. And boy, you want to get to that. That's where you want to get to. So
right.
It can work to your advantage if they haven't been in their lives. It can also, in some cases, work against you. A lot of it's got to do with acuity and how acute they are and how far gone they are.
Yeah, I'll bet, because I've seen cases where the person will come in all defiant, and then they'll, like you said, they'll see somebody they haven't seen, and then they melt. I mean, it just, yeah, they just melt.
It's a very emotional event.
Oh, my gosh.
As started and as long as I've been doing this kind of work, Monty, I'll tell you, and anybody that, that's done this long enough, you're going to run into it. And almost every intervention that I've been involved with is, you get teared up. You got to hold stern there, but
right.
this stuff is tear jerking. It'll bring up every emotion that you have, and of course, being coming from a family of addiction myself, of course, it always reminds me of where I have been.
You bet.
It's very emotional, but it really is. Man, I'm telling you, talk about to unite a family. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wonderful to see.
Yeah, and we're going to take a break, and when we come back, let's talk a little bit about how this affects the interventionist. And some of your experiences with that. Folks, don't go away. We'll be right back. More with Tony Messbarger and Face to Face in this workshop, Understanding Intervention, when we return. Whether you have completed alcohol treatment or drug rehab multiple times, or have never been to any type of structured treatment program, the Benchmark Recovery Center offers a full continuum of care for addiction recovery. This is the Monty'man from Take 12 Recovery Radio. And may I recommend to you Benchmark Recovery Center. They offer an extended care recovery program for adult men and women struggling with alcoholism and drug addiction. Located east of Austin, Texas on 70 acres, the gender-specific 90-day residential program focuses on the 12 steps, life skills, spirituality, and fitness. After completing the residential phase, residents transition into company-owned sober living and 12 months of aftercare monitoring. If you're ready to learn how to live a sober, responsible, committed life full of promise, Benchmark is here for you. To speak with an admissions specialist, call 866-905-4550 or visit the website at benchmarkcenter.com. Discover a life full of permanent sobriety with Benchmark Recovery Center. All right, welcome back. And when we are talking with Director of Admissions for Benchmark Recovery Center out of Austin, Texas, Tony Messbarger has been so gracious to give of his time in putting this workshop together for you listeners. It is such a blessing, because this is something that many of us need to have a deeper understanding of. One of the things that a lot of people want to do, they've got the right sentiment behind it, but what they like to do is try to do an intervention on their own. And I want to tell you, and we've talked about this with the other shows, that is a big, and sometimes fatal mistake. You want to get the professionals involved. You want people that know what they're doing, and people that can stand firm and that can help facilitate this thing. Because if you do not, you're like somebody trying to practice medicine that has never been to medical school. You're a fish out of water. Regardless how much you love the other person, regardless of how much you want to see them be all better today, this takes work, doesn't it, Tony? This takes time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One thing that you said, I can't impress that or emphasize that enough around the fact that the family needs to get somebody involved. It can turn into a complete mess. And you talk about dividing families. So,
yeah.
I always recommend that you get, not only to mention, right before the break, we talked about, the toll that it has on people. It can accelerate this whole process. If you don't know what you're doing, the addict could actually, go off and do something completely stupid,
right?
Without going to treatment. Not to mention the family members becoming divided and at war with each other. So,
sure,
it's real important. One thing I want to clarify real quick: I have assumed a position here at Benchmark Recovery Center as an admissions consultant and interventionist. So Patrick McNamee is the director of admissions.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that real quick, so the folks don't get confused when they call here.
Thank you.
That they're calling the director of admissions if they ask for me. So yeah.
So Patrick's
been doing this for a long time, and he's one of the best in the country at doing this. He's homegrown.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, thank you for your work, my friend. Because, and like we had said this before, somebody that's involved in admissions just isn't sitting behind a desk typing information on a computer. It's a lot more involved.
A lot of work involved in that, and he's one of the best. You'll never meet a guy that puts more passion and love into what he does than Patrick McNamee, that's for sure.
Right, great, good stuff. All right, and I want to let the listeners know that the website is benchmarkcenter.com, or you can follow the links here at Take 12 Radio. We have Benchmark's text link at the bottom of all of our pages, and of course their banner here on Understanding Intervention. Okay, so we've touched on this before about the interventionist making sure they take care of their own recovery and so forth. But this has got to be, you're doing this stuff, it just isn't once a year. So this takes a toll. What an emotional thing to go through, right? For the interventionist.
It is. It really is. And you have to, goodness, thank God for my mentors in this business, because, I can remember early on doing admissions work, and I had, of course, my mentor was a guy named Mark Houston,
right,
that actually created what's now Benchmark Recovery. And I remember, going into his office and just being overwhelmed because a mom had called me. I was in the middle of an intake call and her son had died. And Mark looked at me and he said, put your boots on, my friend, and get ready for it, because you got to wear thick skin around here. And that's the truth. You get to a point where you really have to where you have to have thick skin, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
You walk into these very emotional events. Let me back up a little bit. You start with the initial phone call with a family that's obviously in crisis. They don't know what to do. They're scared to death. They don't have a clue which direction to take. And of course, at that point in time, what I always do is first bring them out of the crisis mode. Get them focused and say, look, we're going to do this. We're going to do it methodically and get them through the crisis mode. And of course, you have to be really calm with all this. You cannot be, you can't, react to some of their reactions.
Right.
It's real easy to do that. That's where your own body of work comes in. And I really believe some of the best interventionists are obviously people that are in recovery and that have experienced the things that, whether it be in an Al-Anon, whether they've been, involved with somebody with addiction, or they've been the addict or alcoholic themselves. They make the best. So, doing your own body of work is very important, because you must be centered in this, because you are going up against the disease of addiction. And you do not ever, by the way, one of the values of this too, the interventionists will go in there on their own, but they're also also with family members. And, because you can walk into environments where there's drugs. Obviously, alcohol is very prevalent. You can walk into a situation where there's, the drug that you used could actually be sitting on the table. So, you always want to be on your best game. If you're not, you're going to fall victim. And so that old saying in the 12-step programs, don't ever go on a 12-step call by yourself. You go over there by yourself, and next thing you know, you're using with the individual, or you haven't checked yourself before you went over there. So really, just taking care of yourself is very important, and being able to work with these families in crisis, get them out of crisis mode, move them into a solution, a can-do attitude. I don't walk into anything without a can-do attitude. It's going to happen. I don't walk in with any kind of any less. This is going to happen. I transmit that in my work to the individuals that I'm working with. There's not an option here. It's going to work. And
so you don't say to the family, well, this may not work.
Well, every family member. I've never taken a call where their addict or their alcoholic is the worst. You just don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, this is and that's usually what you got to overcome that. But you don't want to minimize what's going on there with them. I mean, that's what they're experiencing. Now, typically, what you'll find is that's how the family's experiencing. There's the value of an interventionist, because an interventionist comes in with no emotions, no feelings tied to all of this, no blood, no nothing. They walk in, and of course, they neutralize the room, completely neutralize the room.
Right.
And there's the value in that.
Have you ever had people come to you that have done an intervention before with their loved one, and for whatever reason it didn't work?
Oh yeah. Typically, there's a lot of times where that happens, and it's a quasi. It's not usually a real form. They'll come. Well, I think every day somebody's trying to intervene on them. In one way or another. I mean, you'll get the call today. I'm done. I've talked to him till I'm blue in the face. I mean, he's had legal consequences. That wasn't enough.
Right.
You'll hear all of this, and it's like, it's very common, Monty, to see that. I mean, most families are going to try to intervene to a degree. The ones that are dangerous are when they formally get together and huddle up, read a bunch of stuff online, and then go try to do it without somebody neutralizing the room and orchestrating, more importantly, how this is going to go, and keeping the addict out of the control tower, if you will. So that's very important.
How do you assess, what treatment facility they should go into, particularly if they've been through treatment before?
Yeah, good question. Your chronic relapse, there's some places, Benchmark Recovery is one of them, and there's places that do work with the chronic alcoholic and addict. I mean, the person that's had multiple treatment episodes,
right.
Kitchen traction in the rooms, some really good places out there. Benchmark Recovery Center, I'll tell you, and I don't just say this because I helped open this place up, and I've worked here for years and whatnot, but I will tell you this, with a person that's been to treatment more than once, they've got all the information. I mean, there's not much to teach in a 30-day treatment center or one of these treatment centers. I mean, you're giving them a lot of information. What typically happens with the chronic, and I'll use the chronic as an example, what's dealing with the person that's been to multiple treatment episodes is they've got all the information, but they have yet to use it in a practical way, to put it in a practical application, as Bill would say in our book. So what you find is they have a lot of information, but they never put it into action. Place like this, Benchmark Recovery, what you're going to find is where everything that we do is practical application. It's about the day the individual gets out of the treatment center. So for a chronic relapser, this is a perfect place. If you've got somebody that, let's say, has never been to treatment before, they're insurance dependent, they have maybe not the ability to do the longer term of care in a private pay manner,
right.
Then you've got plenty of really good, solid 30-day residential treatment centers that they can go to, and maybe this will work for them. Maybe this is their first time out. It's an 18 or 19-year-old that's getting into some marijuana, for instance, and they're not as as far advanced as somebody else. Maybe they're going through a phase. Maybe not even a real addict or alcoholic. Maybe they're just somebody who's gone through a phase, and you get them into a treatment setting, and they go on the path to wellness.
Sure.
So those are some examples, and of course there's so many treatment centers throughout the country. It's really good as an interventionist to get a. I don't prescribe to having like 150 that I send to. I'm looking for some real specific the best fits for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have somebody that may have some more clinical issues that need a higher clinical setting. You'll need somebody that needs a really, really long-term treatment center where they need to go for a longer term of care. Where you got Atlanta Lodge, you got Burning Tree Recovery Ranch, got some of those places that do do fine work. And you got to do what's right by the individual. It's not about selfishness. And here's another one that drives me crazy. This is not about, and I hope some interventionists are listening. This is not about building building a reputation or building your referral source. This is about what's doing right by the client. Where does that client best fit?
Yeah.
I live on that. I lived on that ever since I've been in this industry, and I'll get your business will come to you.
Because unfortunately that does happen, doesn't it, Tony, where it's about building your referral source, it's about your reputation and that kind of thing. I mean, let's face it.
It is, and it's our nature to want to prosper and build a larger group of people. But when you make that the important piece of this and the individual becomes secondary, there's a problem with that. There's a huge problem with that. You got to do what's right by the client. Not everybody fits a Benchmark Recovery Center. I can't tell you how many people over the years I've turned away because they're not a fit here. I'm not going to try to fit somebody in here that's not a fit.
Sure.
I'll make a great recommendation based on how they're presenting and send them to another place. But as an interventionist, I think it's really important it's paramount to send an individual to where they'll best prosper. You have to work with current realities. What does the family have? Do they have private pay ability? Do they have insurance? Can they blend? Can they do insurance and a private pay where they're blending it? These kinds of things. Those are all considerations. But what's most important is where is this individual going to get the best solution for what they're up against?
Sure, you bet. Has it been your experience that in many cases employers will support this and put their jobs, the client's job on hold while they get well?
Absolutely. More so now than back even 10, 15 years ago.
Sure.
Nowadays, it's very common. I mean, you go to Walmart or CVS. I mean, you look at the People magazine or some of these magazines that are sitting up there. I mean, somewhere on that front of that magazine is about so and so in treatment.
Yeah.
It's some of these intervention shows, we've mentioned that in previous shows, like intervention and, the work that Ken Seeley and some of these people have done.
Right.
It's wonderful. Ben Levinson over there with Origins and getting in front of Dr. Phil and really putting a face to addiction is really important. So the employers, some people know this. It's very common. I don't know of anybody in this country, at least, probably worldwide, that doesn't have somebody that they know or a loved one that's been affected by the disease of addiction. So I promise you, most employers are sympathetic to it unless that person has just burned it up.
Right.
Completely burned it up. And you really want to protect their employment. So a lot of times you'll work through the employee assistance programs. In other words, the employee assistance program gets involved, and you talk to that advocate so that it's not something that you're not even talking to an employer. You just get the avocation, get an advocate in the way of an EAP officer or somebody that's in charge of that. EAPs do work, by the way. They're very effective. They're confidential. I always tell people you cannot be fired on a substance abuse issue. You can through a performance issue, but it is related to a substance abuse unless you've wrecked a company vehicle and they've done a blood or urine test, yes. But on a substance abuse issue where it isn't performance related to your work, you can go into treatment and you will be covered under short-term disability. I just brought a guy in yesterday like that. So employers are very favorable, more so than ever. More so than ever.
Yeah. The intention, isn't it, when it's time to actually do the intervention, that the person you're intervening on is going to go immediately from that place to treatment. Isn't that the goal?
Pack them and go.
Yeah.
They're already packed. There's nothing that I will not allow a family to start putting luggage together while you're intervening on this individual. After you've intervened on them, it just doesn't work very well. I mean, you're up against time at this point in time. That window of opportunity is opened. They felt the brunt of the intervention.
Right.
It's called pull the handle up and roll, and get them moving towards wellness immediately. You get them to the airport. I secure cell phones. At that point in time, I'll tell them, look, you won't need your cell phone for a little bit, so let's leave it here. If they're adamant about taking it, of course, there's no facility that I work with that will allow them their cell phone anyway, so they can travel with their cell phone. If they want to text and do whatever they got to do, then that's fine. But you roll them, you get them immediately. And here's another part of that too. I mean, we talked about this in previous shows. Let's say mom is in the middle of her. No, I don't like to use mom because I like moms and dads to finish. I usually like to start with mom and dad if I can, not always. Let's say in that type of a scenario. But let's say brother is. We've done 3 or 4 letters, and brother's in the middle of it, and the addicted stands up and goes, okay, well I'll go. I stopped the intervention immediately. Now, I know there's some people that are diametrically opposed to that, but I stopped the intervention immediately. We grab it and we go. I grab letters, and then, of course, the letters are given to the treatment team who can use those letters, not in a shaming way, but can use those letters for them to read and let them know how the other family members do. But when I get a commitment to roll or a commitment to go, we're gone. I mean, it's over. It's done.
Why?
No kissing the family dog or whatever. This is give everybody a hug and let's move.
Yeah, because isn't it interesting how all of a sudden the person you're intervening on, all these things become a concern. Well, what am I going to do about my parakeet or my cat or my dog or my job or the neighbor's house that I've been house sitting or what? All of a sudden, all these things that are playing second fiddle to the drugs and alcohol become this big priority,
Yeah, the externals become real important.
Yeah.
Here we are, we're not taking care of any of it anyway, and all of a sudden it becomes paramount in our lives. And that's pre-intervention work, Monty.
Yeah.
It's all pre-intervention work. You got to plug all the holes. You got to find out who's going to take care of the dog or the cat. You got to find out who's going to babysit or who in the family is going to, step up and watch, pick the kid up from school and watch them on the weekends. You have to make sure that all that, because the disease of addiction is going to attach to all of those externals to try to pull them out and say, well, we can do this. I mean, I've got school. What do you mean? I'm in the middle of school. Well, and really, what's school got to do with anything at this point in time? I mean, you're kind of the disease of addiction. I mean, what's that got to do with it? Parents are going to withdraw you, and we'll get back on board when you get well. And again, there's the interventionist speaking up. You don't want families saying that because they've said it time and time again.
Right.
And they're not hearing them. So that you step in and go, look, your college can be placed on hold. Your life can't.
Yeah, it's good to be able to say when they say, "What about Fido? Taken care of."
Yeah.
What about school? Taken care of.
That's real common. The dog that's been stepped on and hasn't been fed in 3 or 4 days.
Right.
That all of a sudden that dog's real important, and you run up against that stuff. And listen, I understand every bit of that's important. It's important.
Sure, it is.
But we got Johnny. We got your parents are going to take care of this. We've got this. They're taking care of this. Oh, your online bills. Just if you're comfortable, give the password over here, or maybe the treatment center lets you go online once a month and pay your bills. Don't worry about that, or you've already got that taken care of. You plug every hole that's possible, and believe it or not, the family knows them. I mean, they know every excuse that they're going to make. They're going to tell you right off, well, he's not going to do this because he's got a job, and he doesn't want to lose this job. And there's another hurdle that you got to get over right there.
I was going to ask you. You had mentioned that some folks in this field object to stopping midstream if somebody agrees to go right then and there. Why do they object to that?
I don't know. It's just a style that people use.
Yeah.
It's just a style. They want to get everything out on the table and the boundaries set right up there front. right up front, all those boundaries. But that's why I really encourage the treatment team or the treatment center that they're going to make sure that they get those letters and read those letters and understand. And, if you're going to a good treatment center, if you're going to a good place, a good rehab, again, I'm going to use Benchmark Recovery Center here. And, you go to Benchmark Recovery Center, the team here is going to let you read those letters for sure, and they're going to have the families remind them when they want to leave. They're going to remind them of their boundaries. That's why I love interventions, because interventions gets it all sewn up at the front door. In other words, everything is sewn up, and you hand off to a larger team or a treatment center that understands those boundaries and knows how to keep those boundaries in place during the treatment episode. Because what good is if you set a boundary that if Johnny calls home, I don't know why I use Johnny, but Johnny calls home and Johnny says, what, I want to leave, and the parent goes, they digress. Because my experience is the families, if they're not worked with on a regular basis, which again, a place like this does real well, Benchmark, what happens is they start their own digression. I mean, and it's no fault of their own. I mean, they go back to kids, they go back to their careers, whatever they're doing, and they start to digress. And so if you're not on top of that family, literally moving them and advancing them in correlation with the addicted, not too good.
And let's talk about that for a second. The family, in many cases, is going to be having to do as much work, if not more, than the person in treatment, true?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be encouragement for them to go to the family programs of Al-Anon or, some of these programs that have been created for the family members. Because, again, you go back to this is, it's a family disease. It affects everybody in the family. And two, I think we talked about this, too, is that the co-addict, and that's what they're called in a lot of cases, somebody that's codependent or whatever, or the enabler or whatever, they've played a role in this individual's life for so long, and now that role is gone. So imagine you got the addicted going to treatment. They're moving down. They're getting some tools to walk out and gain permanent sobriety, and then they walk back into the family of origin that hasn't done any work whatsoever. Common sense dictates there's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, because now the wife is going to try to assume the role that that she had before, and it's not there any longer, and they become lost. And they'll start putting hyperintensity, they'll become hypersensitive around the individual, which causes them to start, saying things like, well, if you're going to accuse me, I might as well do it. Or, you're making light of me going to a meeting. This is what it is for me. They get jealous because they're going to too many meetings, or they're spending time with a sponsee. So it's really, really important, family members, to go to get your own recovery going. It's not the end of the world. And by the way, this is very common, Monty. I mean, you'll hear this. Well, he's the one with the problem, or she's the one with the problem.
You bet.
And that's a deadly statement, an absolutely deadly statement. The disease of addiction is a family disease, and it affects everybody in the family. And anybody who's been an Al-Anon for years will tell you, that if the Al-Anon is not getting help in correlation while the addicted is getting their help, the chances are very rare for that individual to stay sober. Again, another plug for Benchmark Recovery Center. This is what they do. This is what the family is very paramount to this. We got this. Mark Houston got this years ago. If the family's not on board, they're not united all the way through the treatment episode and then some, forget about it.
Yeah,
it's not going to work.
Yeah,
it's going to work.
You're just throwing them right back to the wolves, and that happens, unfortunately. Okay, so there is kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? There's something to measure the client's treatment. You guys are involved with them, especially if they go to Benchmark. You're involved with them from beginning to the time they leave the treatment center. But you're not always, you don't have that measuring stick with the family, right? I mean, you can't do as much with them. They're kind of on their honor to go to Al-Anon or go seek some other help.
You'll see that pretty quick in the phone when you're the phone contact that this place has with family members. You'll pick up on that real quick, Monty. You'll know if they're moving down a path of wellness themselves. Well, it's not hard to see.
Do you have to get in their face?
You have to considerations and everything else.
Do you have to get in their face sometimes and say, "Look, you have got to get on board with this. You've got your son or your daughter, your mom, or your dad. They've been in treatment now for 2 months. They're moving forward. You have got to get on this thing. Otherwise, you're going to end up right back where you were."
Right, and again, any place that's doing really good, solid work.
Yeah.
And believe me, I'm going to tell you right now. Most places. I mean, they're a lot of places are doing good work, but rather than month 2, let's start that on week 1.
Okay, week 1.
Where we're starting to coach the families immediately and open their eyes to how they've been participating in the addicted's life.
Is that a hard pill for them to swallow?
Not in a shaming way either. You cannot shame a family member around this. I mean, these these addicted don't come with instructions. It's like when Johnny becomes addicted, this is how we operate.
Right.
I mean, this is going to be one of those things that you got to work with them and show them. And you get this through a lot of history. Once you start gathering history on the individual, the addicted individual, once you start gathering history, you'll start to see where they're playing a part in it.
Right. Is that a hard pill for most to swallow? That they've been. Is it a hard pill for most family members to swallow that they have been part of the problem?
Of course.
Yeah.
Again, the family members, in a lot of respects, have more denial. Look how long this has been going on. My family members, of course, I'm in recovery. My family members did it for years. They shoved it under the carpet and minimized it.
Right.
And they minimized their participation in it. And of course, once that's brought to light, it's very shocking. It's very shocking. Some family members take it better than others. Some, if you got to not, they cannot feel like shaming them by saying, well, you should have done this and you should have done. That doesn't work.
Right.
You got to bring them into the fold nice and gently and just say, look, let me give you an example of what you could have done differently in this situation here. And and here's a consideration. We at Benchmark use consideration. Give people considerations rather than ultimatums.
How important is the? I'm going to use the word ultimatum for lack of a better term. When you're working with the person you're intervening with, I mean, I had said to somebody here recently, in telling them that they really need to listen to this workshop because they have a family member that they're kind of, I don't know if we should do an intervention or not. I mean, the church is going to help, but they really don't know how. I said, you need to listen to this workshop. And I said, there's got to be some ultimatums with the person that you're intervening on. I mean, you just can't say, well, if you don't go to treatment, we'll work something out. Right? I mean, there's got to be something.
No. You cannot negotiate with the disease of addiction. People get in trouble, Monty. They try to negotiate with it. It wins every time. There's no negotiating with it. Yeah. You state the case. You have strong boundaries in place with consequences if they don't follow the boundaries.
Yeah.
You have strong consequences in place. The only thing that the disease of addiction understands is action. It doesn't understand words. If words were enough to get me sober, I would have been sober 25, 30 years ago.
Right. You get sober by just reading the sayings on the wall, right?
Well, the first time that I did it, that I got in trouble with law enforcement, and my family, telling me, well, just don't do that anymore. I would have stopped right then.
You bet.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
Words don't mean anything. Actions with, ultimatums with teeth in it, boundaries with teeth in it. Not, if I see anybody that's weak and it's going to digress, what use is it to even send them to treatment? Forget about it.
Right.
They're not going to work. I mean, I'll tell you, I have passed up on people here at Benchmark because the family can't get united. It's not going to work here because the minute it gets rough, they're going to call home and say, well, they're going to give them that list of things like, well, I'll go anywhere but here. This place is like this. They'll make a case and present it to their family members. And of course, if that family member's weak, you've lost them. They're gone.
Right. Right.
Gone. They're
You
going to
bet.
leave treatment. They're going to circumvent it, and the disease has won yet again. So that's, again, goes back to intervention. If you get this stuff done right at the very front, the intervention is done. I'd say the intervention has been done on every one of them. That's what I say. And it's not because of anything other than setting everything up front, and setting the expectations, setting the boundaries, setting everything up front so that you have a shot at a successful treatment episode for the IP.
Well, we're going to be talking a lot more in detail about the treatment picture here on our fourth part on this, entitled "Transport and Treatment." This is really where the rubber meets the road, huh, Tony? I mean, the person getting him in that car, getting him on that plane, getting him in treatment. What happens the first week? We're going to be talking about things like what happens when they want to leave, what do the family members do, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be very interesting because an intervention is only as good as the treatment that the person is going to be attending. True?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, you bet. They have to go to a place that understands. Well, I mean, it's like, you go back to the intervention. I mean, you go through an intervention, it's not gonna work.
Right.
Well, you can get the person moving. I mean, that's really not the hard part. And a lot of family members think that the hard part is keeping them in treatment. It's one thing to move them; it's another to keep them. Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about how you guys do that, and well, I've got several people that have emailed me with some questions, so I really look forward to this. Tony, we are out of time. Thank you so much once again for doing this. This is so vital and so important. My
pleasure.
We could be interviewing people that tell their story of experience, strength, and hope all day long, but what we try to do here at Take 12 Radio is dig even a little deeper than that, because sometimes there's a lot more going on than just deciding that you're going to go to a 12-step support meeting and knock it off, right?
Oh, yeah. Much more to it.
Yeah, you bet.
Much more to it.
So Tony Messbarger is our guest, and the one really doing this workshop for us, folks, from Benchmark Recovery Center. Visit the website at benchmarkcenter.com. Any closing thoughts or words for this one, Tony?
No, Monty, I told you earlier, I just thank you for what you're doing out here. Thank you for what you're doing out here. This is a big deal. People need to be informed so they can make informed decisions. And so, thanks for what you're doing. And it's my pleasure to be here. All mine.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tony. Don't hang up, folks. Remember, our email address is take12radio@comcast.net. If you'd like more information about Benchmark, please email us. Visit benchmarkcenter.com. Give us a call. Just don't do something. Don't just sit there and go, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. If there's something going on and you need help, please give us a call. We've got just an enormous amount of information for you here at the station. We can refer you to people. I certainly don't know everything, but I have a lot of friends that do. They do know a lot more than I do. And if you're with me and you don't have an answer, maybe we put our heads together, we can get some answers. And if you got somebody that needs an intervention, may I recommend Benchmark Recovery Center. Give them a call, would you please? The link is here at take12radio.com. Also on our YouTube site, you can find all the information you need to contact Benchmark. All right, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man along with Tony Messbarger, and we're wishing serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.